Trigger warning, this episode contains discussion of domestic violence. Today I thought I would share with you a story from my life that demonstrates synchronicity and how we are all connected. We are all part of the one. We are all connected. And Spirit can use anyone and anything in your life to affect you and your outcomes. And sometimes you won't even know about it. You'll have no idea. Here's my story about SYLVIA. When I was in nursing school, I was in nursing school from 1997 through 2000 is when I graduated. And this was about halfway through. Maddie was already born, so I would say that this was probably 1998 or 99. And if you didn't know, the entire reason that I became a nurse was to be a midwife. I was all about those moms and babies. That was my heart's desire. I actually can't believe I never made it there. I never followed through with that. But labor and delivery and moms and babies, I lived and breathed for that. So this was during my labor and delivery clinical, my rotation, working with moms and babies and learning about that. So you'd think that I would be all in and just fired up. However, this was also during a period of time where my second husband was over the top abusive. I mean, he always had been, but the fact that I had the audacity to go sign up for nursing school and even think about starting a career sent him, or, demonstrating any level of independence or independent thinking, sent him over the edge. And he didn't deal with it well. How I got to nursing school is a story in and of itself. The abuse had kind of hit a fever pitch, and my little kids were old enough to kind of see what was happening. Of course, they weren't happy about it. And I remember my son one time just crying after something had happened, saying, "Will you leave now, Mom?" And it killed my heart. But what they didn't know was that he had so very seriously threatened to unalive me if I ever left. He made it very clear that I would be no more and he would do what he wanted with my children. And so until I figured it out, I knew that although it was horrible, the safest place for us in that moment was to stay. So this one day, I was on my way to the grocery store, and I was praying, and I just said, "Lord, please deliver me from this man. I don't know how to get out of this alive. I don't know how to do this. I have no means to support my children. I need you in whatever way, in your sovereignty and your omnipotence, your wisdom, whatever way that can happen, I need you to deliver me from this man." And in my mind, I got a picture of the midwife that had delivered Madeline. And it was just impressed upon my heart, "You need to go to nursing school." And I was like, I've never wanted to be a nurse. I don't want to go to nursing school. And I just had this claircognizant knowing downloaded that, now I know what that was. At the time, I didn't know what that was. But I just knew that it was impressed upon my heart that that would be the fastest route to a decent income to gain me independence to take care of my children. And I was sitting at a stoplight, and I could turn left into the grocery store. And what's ironic is it's the same grocery store I'm still by all the time. It's the one right next to the UPS store that I'm at all the time. Anyways, I could turn left into the grocery store, or I could turn right and go down the street to the college. And I was sitting at the stoplight, and I just, that quick, I spun my wheel and cut across several lanes of traffic. I turned right, and I knew I only had so much time because he would be timing me. He knew how long it would take to go to the grocery store and back. And so I went to the college, and I had no idea where I was going or what I was doing. How do you even do that? And so I got out of my car, and I was literally running towards the building, the main building. I figured I'd start there. And there was someone in the parking lot, and I was yelling at them, like, where do I go to sign up for college? And they're looking at me like I'm crazy, and they're like, up those stairs? And I'm like, thank you. And by the time I got up there, I was sobbing. These poor admission people probably thought I was out of my mind. They probably thought I was a lunatic. But I ran into the admissions office, and I'm sobbing, and I'm just like, how do I sign up? Hurry, hurry. I don't have a lot of time. How do I sign up? And she's like, fill this out. And so I did. And the whole time I'm tears just running and running. And I'm like, you have no idea how this is going to change my life. This is going to save me and my children. You have no idea. And they're just like, okay. So anyways, I got signed up. I applied for financial aid, all of the things, and I went home and I told him what I did, and he put me in the hospital that night because he beat the tar out of me. And I knew that I had to keep going. It wasn't optional. I had to keep going. He could be as mad as he wanted. He could hurt me as bad as he wanted. I could either stay and be hurt temporarily while I made it through nursing school and then try to get away from him, or I could leave and for sure get hurt and probably worse. So I kept going. And he did every single thing in his power that he could find to sabotage me. The entire 3 years, sabotage me. I would spend 6 hours working on a care plan, and he would find them and rip them up or burn them. He would do something to mess with the car so that it wouldn't start. A few times he actually punched me in the face and gave me a black eye because he thought I would be too embarrassed to go to college, to go to clinical, because I would get in trouble or something. I went anyways. And so there was just, 3 years of this torment. So right about halfway in the middle, I would say, when I was starting this OB clinical, this OB rotation, a morning came where I had just hit a wall. I was ready to surrender and admit defeat and just let him have his way. I was tired of the struggle. I was tired of the fight. I was tired of the constant pain. I was emotionally, mentally, and physically depleted. And so I decided I was going to quit. I was done. It didn't matter that I was finally getting to work with mothers and babies. I was done. I could not do another day. And so I tried to call the hospital to talk to my supervisor, SYLVIA. Sylvia's on the other side now. She has been for several years. So I'm sure now that I'm talking about her, she's probably here listening to me. So SYLVIA, if you're here, I love you deeply. She's here. Anyways, bear with me. The story gets good. I tried to call the hospital that morning just to let her know that I would not be showing up and that I was quitting. Nobody would answer the phone. I couldn't get anyone to answer the phone. And so I decided that I was going to have to go to the hospital and tell her. And so I intentionally went to the hospital in street clothes. I was in jeans and a sweater, which is a huge no-no. In nursing school, you show up in your starched white uniforms. No, I went in street clothes. And I came unprepared because I brought no books, no papers, no care plan, no pencil, no stethoscope. Like, I brought nothing but me in my street clothes. And I walked in, and Sylvia was standing there in the hallway, and she looked at me, and I could see a little bit of shock on her face and confusion. And I was like, I need to talk to you, please. And so she took me in another room, and I have never in 25 years made it through this story without sobbing, so bear with me. She took me aside and asked me what was going on. And I told her everything that I just told you, and that I needed to quit. And she said, please just give me one day. And I'm like, I can't do this another day. I can't. And she said, I've never met anyone who's supposed to be here more than you. Please, just give me one day, one more day to show you. And I'm like, I'm not dressed. She's like, I will get you scrubs. I'm like, I didn't bring anything. She's like, I will get you what you need. Will you please stay and give me one day? And she finally convinced me. Now, at this part of the rotation, we were just brand new to this clinical. And so, you start off in steps, and like step 1 is just getting used to where things are and how to work with babies and do a little listen to the baby's heartbeat and that kind of thing. Actually going in and working with a mother who is in labor and delivering, like that doesn't happen for like 3 more months, right? And she said, I'm going to put you in with a mom today, and you're going to do what you are naturally here to do. And I was like, are you sure? And she's like, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. And she put me in the room with not just a mom, but it turns out it was a girl that I grew up with and that I knew from school. So we already had a rapport. Her name was Lori. And so I got to spend the day with Lori, who was in labor and delivering her baby. And after a short while, I was just in the zone, and I was just taking care of this mom. And at the end of the day, when all the other nursing students were going home, I knew Lori still had an hour or so. She was getting ready to push, I asked if I was allowed to stay and help see this out. And Sylvia was like, yes, I'll stay with you. And so as this mom is delivering her baby and I'm just in there helping, I'm holding legs, I'm telling her to push. And I happened to, when it was done, I opened the door and got ready to walk in the hall, and I saw Sylvia hugging the nurse I had been working with all day, and they were crying and hugging, and Sylvia's like, we saved one. I think we saved her. I think we saved one. So that part of the story is where it had wrapped up for me at that time. I was just like, wow, she really went above and beyond and helped me. What a blessing she was. So then fast forward a few years till I was now graduating nursing school. I was done and I was graduating. And if you aren't familiar, when a registered nurse graduates from school, they have what's called their pinning ceremony. It's when they come and pin. It's a ceremony separate from the graduation ceremony, and you choose someone special to you to put your pin on you, your little Florence Nightingale pin that says RN, and they anoint your hands with oil, and it's very special. It's even more important than the graduation ceremony, honestly. My husband was so offended that I didn't want him to pin me. I was like, I made it through this in spite of you, not because of your support. So I pulled out the phone book. This was back in the days of phone books, before the computers and Google and all that. I pulled out the phone book and I looked up Sylvia Zilch in Amherst, Ohio. I knew that her family owned a flower shop. I knew she lived in Amherst. So I just looked for her and I found her. So I called and I got her answering machine and I left a very shaky, mousy message because I was afraid she wouldn't even remember who I was. So I left a message on her answering machine and I'm like, "Hi, Sylvia, it's Veronica. You probably don't even remember who I am, but I was one of your students a few years ago, and I'm getting ready to have my pinning, and I was wondering if you would do me the honor of pinning me, please." So she called me back and she's like, "Are you crazy? Of course I remember you, and of course I would pin you. I'm so honored that you would ask me." So she came, she pinned me. It was a beautiful ceremony. She handed me a gift. It was a card. I don't know if you remember them, but back in the 80s and 90s and whatnot, they had these cards that were like beautifully illustrated, and some of them were very thick, almost like a book, and they were full of poems and whatnot. Anyway, she gave me one of those, a thick thing, and in it was a letter from her, or a note. You know, she handed it to me. She's like, "Read this when you get home." And so when I got home, I dove into this thing, and so I opened this letter, and it says, and that was a long time ago. That was almost 23 years ago. So I'm going from memory. I still have it somewhere in a box of keepsakes, but it's been a few decades since I've read it. So bear with me. I know the gist of it, though, for sure. This is the hard part. Spomi, help keep me grounded, please. I appreciate your help. So I opened the letter, and it said something to the effect of this. On that morning, I had left home and was driving to the hospital where I was teaching nursing clinicals for their OB rotation. And on the way, I was praying, and I was talking to God about how burnt out I felt by nursing and by teaching, and I just felt like it was such a thankless job. I felt like my gifts were being wasted, and that I really wasn't touching anyone or making a difference in anybody's life. And that I thought it was time for me to be done. And I said in no uncertain terms, basically, "Lord, if you don't show me today that I have impacted someone's life directly or made a major impact on someone and their path in some way, then today's my last day as a nurse." And I walked in, and there you were. And by the end of that day, you and I were both still nurses. And I know you think that God used me to help you, but you need to know that unbeknownst to you, He also used you to save me. And I had written down your story and typed it out, and I speak at women's groups and prayer groups and churches and whatnot as a ministry. And I always like to share this, which is your story. I've included a copy, and I opened it and it said Veronica's story. And she told the story, my story, and the story of that day. But it just goes to show you that the universe always has your back, and that your team is always working and synchronizing behind the scenes for your best good. The universe has plans for you that you aren't even aware of yet. And I guarantee you they're already being worked on. There are people in this world you've never heard of, haven't met yet, or maybe that you actually work right next to, but you will never, ever, ever know how God synchronized something for you to affect them or for them to affect you. It's already in the works. And you never know who's watching you, and you never know how anything you say or do is directly affecting someone watching you, someone listening to you, good, bad, and ugly. But you can think that it is just a normal day, or you can be like Sylvia, like lost in your own woes, or like me, lost in my own woes and sorrows. And you have no idea how the universe is using that to change the life path of someone else. And unless she shared that with me, I would never, ever, ever know that. That I played such a major part in her life story, and I would have never known. Thanks for listening to my story. I hope it inspired you and opened your heart somehow.